Poker is a skillful game, but it is ultimately left up to chance whether or not you go up big or lose everything you've bet on. Sometimes the stars align and you're gifted with a straight flush on the flop, and you're free to bet and take the money of the other players. This fortunate outcome, however, holds no bearing over how the following hands will play out. If the pot of luck you had drawn from had suddenly ran out, it can be easy to lose all of your progression and dip into the negatives. Coal boom towns of the 1800s and 1900s resonate with me as an eerily similar comparison. When coal would be found in those regions of the Rust Belt, operations would soon begin to flourish and the base of a town would begin to form. The only thing left to do would be to continue to draw profit from the wealth of natural resources in the mountains. When the hand is stacked in your favor, it can be easy to be overconfident and feel like the big man at the table. But when those profits dry up, damage and disarray are soon to follow. The effects of such destructive and immoral behavior are still being felt today, as many of the cities and towns of this region are perceived to be years, if not decades, behind the rest of the country. The world's longest poker game is widely considered to be the 8-year run that happened at the Birdcage in Tombstone, Arizona, from 1881 to 1889. Although there is another game that is said to have been longer. But for that, we'd have to take a trip to the picturesque hillsides and hollers of the Appalachian Mountains. The Appalachian Mountains are among some of the oldest mountain ranges in the world, with its formation beginning around 1 billion years ago, when the underwater Iapetus Plate slid underneath the North American Craton, which hastened the creation of the supercontinent known as Pangaea. The mountains we know of today wouldn't begin to take shape until around 300 to 500 million years ago, when the peaks are assumed to be comparable to the modern-day Himalayas. Due to hundreds of millions of years of erosion, though, the mountains have shrunk significantly in size. The Appalachians are known to be home to the majority of coal towns and coal mining operations in the US, and that is not an accident. Vast deposits of coal formed and got embedded in these mountains as the colliding plates slowly began to encapsulate the swampland that had previously dominated the landscape. All throughout the 1800s and early 1900s, coal towns began to spring up from wealthy investors seeking to capitalize upon the abundance of natural resources in the area, which brings us to the fated town of Thurmond, West Virginia. The rugged terrain that these towns were built upon made it difficult to build infrastructure to support the fledgling industry. But soon enough, the growing opportunity became impossible to ignore, so railroad networks were built all throughout the region. Due to the aforementioned terrain, these railroads were typically only built in the valleys, usually near a stream or river of Appalachia. Thurmond was one of these towns. After finding coal in the New River coal fields around the site, the C&O Railroad would quickly construct an extension line that ran through the New River Gorge that would soon become the downtown area of Thurmond. The railroad was constructed in 1880 and the town was then founded, becoming one of the C&O's most profitable lines. The station at Thurmond doubled as a stopover point for workers and travelers leaving and going to the mines, and served as a stopover point for coal trains heading to the bigger cities like Cincinnati. As Thurmond began to grow, as too did its prestige and reputation. Shops and houses began to be built all along the railroad, making for one of the more interesting downtowns I've ever seen. Only pictures though, of course. I'm not 110 years old. Wealthy coal mine operators began to utilize the town as an oasis for pleasure and gambling. In what was originally intended to be a small religious town on the New River slowly turned into a hedonistic playground for the rich to play around in, and there was no bigger sandbox than the hotel known as the Dun Glen. When talking about the rich history of Thurmond, it is almost impossible not to mention the Dun Glen, but in our case, it is mandatory. The Dun Glen was located just across the river from the downtown area of Thurmond, and its reputation precedes itself. Alcohol, gambling, and promiscuity were said to have run rampant at the hotel from its construction in 1901 all the way up until its demise at the hands of a fire in 1930. It was here at this hotel that the longest game of poker ever played is said to have been played for over 14 years. But there's a problem. The evidence behind this monumental claim is scanty at best, to the point that I'd be willing to call this only an urban legend. I tried to find the source material to get any more information, but I just kept being ping-ponged around websites with the same exact set of statements. The source for this outlandish event points back to Ripley's Believe It or Not, but it seems the history of this game has become lost to time. But I think that's okay. Not everything has to be documented and secure for it to make an impact. I see this as a microcosm of the Coal Belt in general, a forgotten game of poker in an all but forgotten part of the country. Thurmond is now on the brink of becoming a ghost town, with only 3 people living in the area as of 2022, down from its all-time high of 462 in 1930. And I don't think I'd have it any other way. I don't believe we'll ever be able to confirm or deny those claims, but the echoes of a past civilization still ring in the empty valleys of the Appalachian Mountains. Whether the game was played or not, it still had enough of an impact for me to be interested in talking about it. And I really think that's all that matters. Thanks for watching. Peace.